Welcome. Today we're going to be taking a look at Perseverance Castaway Chronicles Episode 2. This is a 1 to 4 player, dice worker placement, area influence science fiction game. Since Episode 1, we have built a makeshift wall and are now called to discover what is beyond the wall. So we will take the role as leaders. We will be taking actions, adventuring, creating outposts and camps, trying to become the best leader. How do we become the best leader and win the game? By having the most followers at the end of the final assembly. Now that we know what the winning condition is, let's take a look at the components, setup, and how gameplay works in Perseverance Castaway Chronicles Episode 2. Now let's take a look at the components. Some of the components are from the deluxe edition of the game. You have the main game board. There are 2 sides, one for the 2 and 3 player game and one for the 4 player game. This is found in the bottom right corner. There are 5 zones on the main game board. Discovery, where there are local dino attacks, sustenance, military, expansion, and construction. In the Discovery Zone, you have hexes that have spaces for dinos, camps, watchtowers, outposts, dice settlement, and leaders. And on the right side of the Discovery Zone, you have a key for dino attacks or breaches. For each of the other 4 zones, you have spaces for dice. Connected to the dice spaces are the corresponding actions, squares for settlements, and spaces for leaders. Outpost offer board, the assembly board. On the left side, you have the rank based on votes. On the right side, you have the dice pool changes based on the number of players. Assembly scoring tiles. The number of players is in the bottom right corner, and the assembly number is in the top middle. And on the left are possible dice pool changes. Assembly reward tiles. These are double-sided. Map hex tiles. These are double-sided. And for your first couple games, it's recommended to use side A. Outpost tiles. These have spots for dice and settlements. Officer tiles. At the top of the officer tile, you have the name. Underneath that is a depiction, which is also the influence pool. Under that, you have influence spaces. Next to the spaces, you have the officer bonus. And at the bottom, you have the scoring condition. Adventure cards. There are starter, plains, canyon, and temple adventure cards. At the top left, you have the minimum amount of soldiers to be placed on this card. Next to that is the name. In the middle is a depiction. And at the bottom of the card, you have the resolution, which can have multiple stages, and threat rolls. Dino attack cards. At the top of the card, you have the defense threshold. Under that, you have the structure defense, which is also printed on the discovery zone. Underneath that, you have the win or loss resolution. And at the very bottom, you have the savior bonus or counterattack. Challenge cards. You have heavy and light challenge cards. Temple miniature, rally marker, dino miniatures. You have tramplers, raptors, and shield heads. Glow berries. You have story tokens, scrap tokens, food tokens, island resource tokens, neutral dice, threat die, and now the player components. You have your leader board. On the top left of your leaderboard, you have tracks for valor and votes. On the top right, you have spaces for watchtowers, starting resources, and under that, your name. Below that, we have spaces for soldiers, leaders, and captured dinos. Then we have a depiction of your leader and columns for each officer. Below the officer, we have the perks. These give ongoing effects. The exclamation points cost 1 story or valor when gaining the perk. This is indicated in the bottom left corner. Leader miniature, follower dial, leader cap, settlements, camps, influence cubes, player dice, light and heavy soldiers, watchtowers, vote token, permanent vote token, valor token, patrol token, and breach token. And then finally we have your rulebook. Now let's take a look at the setup. We're going to be setting this up for a 3-player game which takes 16 steps. Step 1, place the main board in the center of the play area. Step 2, set up the adventure cards. Separate the adventure cards by type, shuffle each stack, placing the starter and temple cards to the side. Then you'll place the canyon and plains next to the main board. You'll flip the first card of both decks, and the top card face up on the deck. Step 3, separate, shuffle, and place challenge cards. Separate the challenge cards by type, shuffle each stack, and place them near the adventure cards. Step 4, place the threat die and rally markers next to the challenge decks. Step 5, place the assembly board and scoring tiles. Place the assembly board next to the main board with the corresponding scoring tiles in ascending order. Step 6. Place assembly reward tiles next to the assembly board. Step 7. Create supply pools. Create supply pools for the dinos and resources within reach of all the players. Step 8. Separate, shuffle, and place dino attack decks. Separate the dino attack deck into canyons and plains, shuffle the decks, and place them face down next to the main board. Step 9. Place outpost offer board and outpost tiles. Place the outpost offer board next to the main board, then shuffle the outpost tiles, placing them face down at the top of the board, and then you'll draw the top 3 below the stack. Step 10. Create the dice pool. Take a number of neutral dice based on the number of players. For a 4, 3, or 2-player game, you'll take 10, 8, or 9 dice. Roll the dice and place them next to the board. Step 11. Place officer tiles. Randomly place an officer tile next to each zone. And for your first game, it's recommended that the mate would go to the sustenance zone, security would go to the military zone, the steward would go to the expansion zone, engineer to the construction zone, and the captain to the discovery zone. Step 12. Set up map. Place matching map hex tiles on the corresponding spaces on the map. Keep in mind that side A is used for your first few games. Then place the temple on the corresponding square space on the tile. Then place the starting dinos with the starting arrow symbol. Step 13. Get leader. Choose a leader and get the corresponding player board, mini or standee, and follower dial, setting it to 10. Step 14. Get player components. Choose a color and get the corresponding settlements, camps, 25 influence, dice, 5 heavy and 5 light soldiers, leader base cap, 3 watchtowers, a stage marker, breach token, valor token, vote tracker, permanent vote tracker. Then you will get 1 food token, 1 scrap token, an island resource token, story token, and 2 glow berries. And draw a starter and temple adventure card. Step 15. Place your player components. Place the player board in the center of your player area. Place the soldiers above your player board with 1 light soldier on your player board. Place the leader in its base cap, and then place the leader and the resources on your player board. You'll place the camp settlements for dice and influence cubes to the right of your player board. You'll roll the 5th dice and place it in the dice pool. Place the cards and follower dial to the left of your player board. Place the watchtowers across the top of your player board, valor tracker at 1, vote trackers at 0, and adventure and breach tokens above your player board. Step 16. Choose a start player and get starting spaces. Choose a start player, and in reverse turn order, place a settlement in the bottommost space if it is open in one of the 4 bottom zones, or 1 camp on the left cleared area in the discovery zone. Then place 1 influence cube on the leftmost empty space on the officer in that zone, and place another influence cube on the tier 1 perk of that same officer, and get the officer bonus. Now let's take a look at the gameplay. The game consists of a number of player turns until the endgame is triggered after the 3rd assembly or 2nd assembly in a 2-player game. A player turn consists of 4 phases: primary action, secondary action, adventure card resolution, and end of turn checks. Now let's take a look at each in detail. Phase 1, the primary action. This is carried out in 2 steps. Step 1, place a die from the dice pool on an open space for the action of your choice. If you use a die of another player, you will pay 2 followers. You must place it on the depicted space for that action if possible. You can spend 1 story to change the face. Step 2, resolve the effect or action. The type of actions. For the sustenance zone, which is focused on welfare and discovery, you have the adventure action. You may adventure out in the wilderness. You would choose a camp to become the rally point, placing the rally marker. Keep in mind, camps can't be overrun with breach tokens, and they can have other players on that space. Then you would pick 2. You can combat dinos. You can combat any number of dinos on adjacent hexes to your rally marker, or pay 2 glow berries to go 2 hexes away. You would place your soldier or leader to defeat the dinos. The light soldier would be able to defeat 1, and the heavy soldier or leader would be able to defeat 2. They cannot be used the rest of the turn. Clear area. You can pick a hex with no dinos, 1 space away from the rally marker. If it is a plain or canyon space, you would remove the tile, then play 1 adventure card matching the type in front of you and assign soldiers. Keep in mind when doing this, you cannot have an ongoing adventure. Or you can build a camp. You would pay an island resource to place a camp on a cleared area, gaining the reward. Then you would resolve a dino attack. The player with a camp token at your rally point resolves a dino attack. And then finally you would return the rally marker. The gather action, you would pick one or both, get 2 glowberries and a food or island resource, and or release a shieldhead dino from your enclosure to gain 2 glowberries and 1 food. The pub action, gain 1 story plus 1 per your dice on the main board. The military zone, you have the training action. You can pick 3 non-equal actions. Get a light soldier, spend a food for a light soldier, spend an island resource for a heavy soldier, spend a story to convert up to 2 light soldiers to 2 heavy soldiers, gain a story or valor, release a raptor from your enclosure to gain a light or heavy soldier, or spend 1 valor to take an adventure card from the offer, then draw and replace it. The expansion zone, you have the marketplace. You would pick one or both, spend a glowberry for any 2 resources, or exchange resources. The politics action, pick one option. Spend 2 food to replace a neutral die in the die pool set to the same face. Then gain 1 follower for your die on the board or in the dice pool. Pay 1 food and 1 story to replace a neutral die on the board set to the same face and gain 2 followers. Pay 2 valor to get 2 permanent votes and 1 vote for the next assembly. The settle action, pick 2 different options. Pay a scrap and a food to place a settlement in any zone and get the bonus. Spend an island resource and a story token to place a settlement. Keep in mind when choosing multiple settlements, you must pick different zones. Or receive followers equal to the settlements in a single zone. The construction zone, you have the build action. Pick up to 2 different options. Spend a scrap and an island resource to select an outpost tile to place on a cleared area, and place one of your settlements on that tile. You would get the reward and refresh the outpost offer. Release a trampler to place a watchtower on a cleared area without a watchtower. Then take an adventure card if you want. Spend a scrap and a glowberry to place a camp on a cleared area that doesn't have a camp and gain the reward. And the salvage action. Get 2 scraps. For the discovery zone, you would place a die and rally marker on a cleared area tile, resolve the effect, and the owner of the outpost gets a dino attack and resolves the attack. Once you've carried out a primary action, we move to phase 2, the secondary action. You would choose one of the following. Influence an officer. You can spend 1, 2, or 3 stories to place 1, 2, or 3 influence on an officer tile, and then place an influence cube on a perk of that same officer on your player board. Keep in mind that you have to place a tier 1 perk before you're able to place a tier 2 perk, and you have to have 2 perks between tier 1 and tier 2 to place a tier 3 perk. Another secondary action is to place a leader on the leader space in a zone, and then get one of the actions in that zone. The third option is to move your leader. You can pay 2 glowberries to move your leader to a different zone. Keep in mind that the zone's leader space has to be empty. The fourth possible secondary action is explore. Gain an adventure card and then get one of the following: 2 glowberries, 1 story, or 1 valor. The fifth possible secondary action is to counterattack. Select a player and combat all dinos on their dino attack card. You would return their breach token to the supply and receive the savior bonus. When dinos attack, you would check the defense threshold, count the defense structures, and determine if it is a success or failure. You would carry out the result, and if you lose, the dino will breach. For breaching dinos, you would place the card next to your player board, place the dinos on adjacent hexes, and you would place the breach token under the camp on that hex, and then you would lose 1 follower per dino on the breach card. When you are combating dinos from adventure effects or counterattack secondary actions, you would commit soldiers and leaders. The light will deal 1 damage, and the heavy and leader will deal 2 damage. Then you would assign damage. It would take 1 to defeat tramplers and raptors, and 2 for shield heads. You would determine injuries. The raptors and shield heads defeated would cause 1 injury. Suffer or cancel injuries. Your leader can absorb up to 2 injuries. Heavy soldiers can be assigned up to 2 injuries and are returned to your supply. Light soldiers can take 1 injury, but can pay a valor to cancel the injury. And then you would choose the reward. Kill or capture the dino. Killing the dino will get you 1 follower. To capture, you can only capture 1 per combat. You can only have 1 type, up to a max of 4 of that type. Once we've taken a secondary action, we move to phase 3, adventure card resolution. You would resolve the adventure card if you have one in front of you. To resolve an adventure card, it takes 4 steps. Step 1, receive rewards for the stage, drawing a challenge card for each soldier if depicted, and getting rewards on a number of cards depicted. Step 2, you would resolve the threat rolls. Based on the number that you have on the card, you would roll the threat die, and if it was less than that number, you would lose a soldier. Step 3, stage transition. You would resolve the threat roll between stages. Step 4, wrap up. You would reshuffle challenge cards, and if you are finished with the adventure, you would return soldiers to your player board and turn the adventure card face down, and it is used for a Chief of Security bonus. After we resolve the adventure card, we move to Phase 4, End of Turn Checks. This is carried out in 3 steps. Step 1, reset toppled soldiers and leaders. Step 2, for each breach token, lose 1 follower for each dino breach. Remove 1 dino if 2 or more breach. And then Step 3, check for assembly. When there are no dice left in the dice pool at the end of a player's turn, you have an assembly. This is carried out in 5 steps. Step 1, check for majority presence and distribute assembly reward tiles zone by zone. Left to right and then the discovery. Presence is the number of pieces in a player's color in a zone. If players are tied, both would get the votes equal to half the zone's population, or 2 plus the number of settlements. Step 2, choose rewards. Players would then secretly choose the production or votes with their reward tiles and reveal simultaneously. The second place in each zone will get half of the other reward. For production, you would get a number of production equal to the zone's production plus 2 followers, and for votes, you would get votes equal to the population. Step 3, assembly scoring. Based on the current assembly, scored followers based on the number of votes. First, second, or third. Step 4, officer scoring. For each officer tile, the player with the most influence cubes gets the bonus. The second most gets the bonus at half the amount. And then Step 5, wrap up. You would discard the leftmost assembly tile, retrieve leaders, collect dice and create the dice pool, possibly adding a number of dice based on the assembly and the number of players, refresh the outpost tiles, refresh the adventure cards, reset votes to the permanent vote number, and place dinos on any hexes adjacent to a cleared area, placing 1 dino following the arrows. Then it would become the next player's turn. Turns and assemblies would continue until the final assembly, and we would go to the final scoring. The final scoring takes 2 steps. Step 1, score captured dinos based on the number and type. And Step 2, score leftover assets. After the players tally their final score, the player with the most followers is the best leader and wins Perseverance Castaway Chronicles Episode 2.